Here we go.
Okay, looks like we are now live. Christy is going to put the link on Facebook and Haunter's Hangout where I'm posting this. Christy, would you mind putting it on my Facebook page also? Because I put a little mention there too,
Of
and
course.
I appreciate that. So I'm going to mold this guy today. He's going to be a one-piece mold. I have my sculpting bust set up on a piece of plastic, so that's going to be pretty easy. Um, I have some depth things to worry about here. My mask is only mold only has to be this deep, except for my ears, which are actually about an inch and a half lower. So that's going to make my mold a little bit interesting. Uh, and I'm going to just run my mold line right down here. So what I'll have to do is I'll have to paint in the ears because I'm only going to make the mold this deep. Of course, these will be here, but normally I like to continue my mask mold all the way down to the ground when it's a one piece so that I'm going to have some stuff I need to cut off down here, but as an advantage, um, it's a very easy pour and pull. I don't have to do any painting up. So when this is upside down and in negative, I'm going to pour this full of latex. I'll paint it in and pour it in with latex. And I'll have to brush up the ears because the mold will be this deep. So I'll have two little hills on each side for the ears. But to make even that go smooth, I have to add some clay to make a nice little ramp for this mold. So that's what my first step is going to be. I just want to stop any problems from occurring. So I'm going to go over here where my bust meets my plastic. I'm going to put some clay down to ramp up that edge. That way, if plaster gets down there, it won't go underneath of the head form. Okay. And I'm just taking wads of clay and I'm just kind of pushing it up against the form to make sure that should plaster get in there, it's not an issue. And I'm thinking about how my mold is going to work. And it's a one-piece mold, so I don't have to do a mold wall or anything. But I do have to think about pouring and pulling up this mask because I do want to get several copies of it. I'm going to be using Hydrocal. Hydrocal is a little bit different than Ultracal because Hydrocal kind of likes to be done in one. It doesn't like to be done in layers. So now I've got a corner. This mold has keys in it. I'll try and show you guys this. This mold has these keys built into it. Well, I've got a hard corner right here. And I don't think that's going to be a mold locking issue, but I do just want to cover that up with clay because I know clay is going to release no problem. Not worried about that at all. So I want to kind of clay over as much as I can that's going to show here. And this doesn't have to be a super thick mold. I know that I'm going to be pretty gingerly with it. A two-piece, you have to make a little bit thicker because it's going to get some manhandling. You have to pick these two big rocks up together and make sure they line up and scrape them on each other. A one-piece mold is a pretty simple machine. You know, I pour in latex, it solidifies. I pour out the excess, it solidifies, and then I peel it out. So I'm not going to have near as much stress on this as I would a two-piece mold. I should still have a quality product, but it doesn't have to be near as thick. And I'm just going to go around the neck here. And undercuts are always something that I worry about and I'm concerned with. If this chin stuck down and I had plaster going right up against this bust, it would lock into this mold.
Hmm.
So I needed to make sure, and I'm looking, and I don't think that that chin is an undercut in the least. So I'm probably going to leave that chin in the mold almost as is. I might put a little bit of clay over it just to be sure. And I'm probably going to, because I'm not on my head form, the chin goes all the way down right to the ground. Well, this one has a bit of a neck piece, and it comes all the way out. I'm not going to mold all this down here. That's a waste of plaster, and it makes the mold heavier than it needs to be. So since I'm not going to do that, I'm going to put a wall here, and then later, not tonight, I will actually build a clay wall inside of the mold and do a plaster wall that brings this piece all the way down. So it'll still be a one-piece mold. I'm just building like the back half of the bowl later. Right now, that's where the neck is. So I'm using very small bits of clay, and I'm going to just cover up a good bit of this neck. I'm not super worried about it because I think it's not a undercut, but I am going to be careful and cover as much as I can of this neck. There's some curves on the neck, which could be a problem. A lot of people on their jaw, if you go to the middle of the ear, you can't pull it off with the jaw. Put your hand at your ear and try and push, you get caught on your jaw. So that's an undercut when I go to mold. So I am going to pad this area right here under the jaw on both sides to make sure that plaster doesn't get down there and cause a big issue. Undercuts are your worst enemy when it comes to molding. This is a much simpler mold than you normally have to make for a mask because this is a one-piece mask mold. Basically, I'm making a mask-shaped bucket, which is all that we need.
Like the puppies are defending the home front.
Yeah, I have a Great Pyrenees, and one of the breed traits is to bark constantly at nothing as she defends the home front, as you say. Christy's going to monitor questions both on the YouTube page as well as Facebook. And do you watch Google Plus too, Christy?
Yes, I'm trying to watch all three of them.
Okay, but she may get overwhelmed, so I'm going to ask that you concentrate on Facebook. I can't even find the Google Plus page where these things show up. So later on, I can always go back and read questions and answer any that are on YouTube. So if you guys make that the primary place where you ask questions, that'd be awesome. So it looks like we got 6 people watching. It is Friday night. I don't blame you. You are literally going to watch rocks dry if you hang out here. So I'm going to make liquid rock, and then we will make it dry, which is riveting.
You're rocking out.
That's right. I'm rocking out over here on a Friday night. So you guys can see, now I have this little ridge right here, and that's just a little bit of a ridge to help me catch some plaster. I'm really not concerned with that, and I don't need to build up a huge mold wall like I do for a 2-piece mask. All I'm trying to do is slow down any plaster that runs past this point. All right, I am happy with my job of containment there. So I need to spray this to seal it. I'm looking for my paint. Well, I should set up before people show up. Let me grab a can of spray paint. Oh, here it is. I did. I set it up. And this is basically a layer of spray-on plastic, i.e. spray paint, that's going to help this clay come out of the mold. It's going to do a couple of things for me. I'm going to do 2 little coats. It's going to help the clay come out of the mold for sure, but it's also going to, the second coat is going to help the plaster stick because I'm going to use a matte. This is a satin mossy green. Doesn't matter what it is. A lot of people use crystal clear. That's fine. I don't mind it changing the color. It doesn't bother me at all. I have to let this dry. While this is drying, I'm going to cut up some burlap. So this guy, I'm going to slide out of the way here.
Now, Imler wants to know, Imler FX wants to know, what type of plaster doesn't like to be done in layers?
Hydrocal. Hydrocal does not like to be in layers.
Right.
Hydrocal wants you to get it done in one shot. You can actually get a lot of little surface cracks if you do layers. I used to think that they were exactly the same, but they do have their differences. Ultracal and Hydrocal. And this burlap that I'm using, you'll note it's a larger weave than fabric store burlap. I use the burlap that I get at Home Depot. It's 25 bucks. I think it's a 10-yard roll. That is good, but that big loose weave is really hold the wet plaster for me. So I like using that. And that is plenty of the roll. I'll put that away. It'll be a little while before we get to this part of the process, but this is a great thing to do while my spray paint is drying.
Now, you're going to use the burlap in the mold.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, often I don't do that, but since I'm showing people, I should do it the right way, I guess. I do shortcuts. I normally don't use burlap. I don't think that you need to all the time, but I'm going to try and go rather.
Should or should not?
You should use burlap. That is the common way to do it, is to use burlap. That's the big theory. Is burlap is the way to go. It strengthens your mold. I would rather glue back together a mold that fell apart like a china cup rather than trying to piece back together one with burlap in it, because it won't fit back together correctly if it breaks.
Gotcha.
So, and I'm just cutting big, rough pieces of this, and I'm going to put them together, and I'll cut it even more, but this is just sort of how I do it. I kind of look for, remember Reader's Digest way back then?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, I try to go for Reader's Digest sized pieces. How's that sound?
Sounds like I'm dating myself and I shouldn't have said anything.
Yes, Reader's Digest. One point in time, there was one in every bathroom in America.
Or a doctor's office.
That's just where they ended up, yes. As a kid, all I read was after they had a big article, they would have the little pages of little stuff in it, and I would always read that because I thought those were always interesting or funny or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, so I folded these so I can just get a lot of cuts done at once, and that gives me some different sizes of burlap. All those are the ends. These are set. Now I can touch my sculpt. It's not 100% dry yet, but it's ready for the next layer of spray paint. That was a gloss. You can tell because it's so shiny. I want to now put a matte on it because a matte is going to help me. It'll give it some grab, and that'll help the plaster to hold on. Because right now the plaster would fisheye on this, meaning it would repel it. So I'm going to grab another can of spray paint.
How many layers of spray paint? Just 2?
Just 2. Of course, right now all I can find is gloves. Here we go. Haunted house color we all know and love. Flat black, 99 cents a can.
Oh, yeah. Let me see if I recognize a can. Lowe's.
One of them.
Yeah. Well, no, Home Depot has that same can, I think.
And I'm more of a Depot guy most of the time.
Mm-hmm. I always think it's funny when I go in there and they're like, "What are you looking for?" And I tell them, and it's usually plumbing supplies for 3-axis skulls. Oh, what are you making with it? Stuff.
Yeah, you can't help me. Good effort, but you cannot help me.
I thought it was funny when I was in Arizona. I knew the guy so well in the plumbing section, and he used to also work on the hardware, where they had the nuts and bolts and stuff. And he'd look at me and go, "Where's your list?"
So now I have some Vaseline, and I am just going to put this on the parts of the sculpture, the sculpting bust, like the eyes. Now, I don't think plaster is going to stick to this. This is actually a pretty darn smooth plastic. I don't think the plaster is going to have a lot of bite. But because I normally do plaster, which is porous, I do want to cover these eyes as a habit. Not because I think I'll need it, as a habit. All right, so now I have sprayed it. I have fleshed it out a little bit with clay. I've cut my burlap already. I'm going to go ahead and start getting my water ready. And, of course, getting me ready. Getting me ready. Plaster dries out your hands. Go ahead and put on some hand lotion before you start. I've been in situations where I've had to make 10 plaster molds in a day, and your hands are just cracked and bleeding by the end because of how much moisture the plaster sucks out.
And which plaster are you using?
Right now I'm using white Hydrocal.
Okay.
But all plaster does that.
Mm.
All plaster, all concrete, all cement products, they all do it. And I also put on gloves.
Is a good idea.
I didn't used to put on gloves, but it does seem to help. Now, I have a plethora of gloves that are not my size, so you're going to watch me fight with these a little bit to get them on, because I have giant man hands. There we go. All right, glove one. This one has a reservoir tip. Good deal. All right, so you just want to protect your hands from the plaster. You also probably want to wear a respirator, because what does plaster do? Plaster is a powder that you mix with moisture, and then it turns into a rock. Powders are fine and can go into the air. While that powder is in the air, you can breathe it in. Your lungs contain moisture, so then all these little rocks form in your lungs. It's great for you. It's not great for you. You should probably wear a respirator if you do this a lot. If you're going to make one mold a year, you'll be fine. But if you are, you're starting out doing this a lot, get a respirator. It's a good idea. I will not be using one because you guys have to hear me talk. I normally don't use one. But I'm a grown adult and I'm allowed to make poor choices. All right. Never ever, I have buckets of water here. Never ever let plaster water touch your sink. There's no sink in the shop because that drain will get clogged faster than you can blink. Okay. And now I am putting in one of these of water. A second one of these of water. This is going to yield me a lot of plaster, but I want to get that sucker knocked out in one batch.
Would it be possible to move the stool or the camera, please? Ah, thank you.
How's that?
Better.
Okay, grab a brush so I have a brush ready when it's time. So I do want to brush on that first layer. Here is plaster. This is white Hydrocal. I've already put in a container.
FX says, if you're using Hydrocal normally, your molds have to be more than one layer and they don't seem to crack. Sorry, I'm confused on that part.
Yeah, this doesn't like layers as much as Ultracal does. All right, I don't want to clump in the plaster. I very much want to sprinkle it in. You should sift it in, but I'm not going to spend my time sifting this into here. So I'm rotating the bowl a little bit as I sprinkle this powder in. I know that one of these will not be nearly enough. And I don't want to dump it in. Do not dump. You want to sprinkle. Probably a better angle for you guys. And I'm trying to cover all of it. I don't want to build up a pile in one spot or another. I want it all to get an even layer of plaster. For those of you keeping track, here's my second. But what I'm looking for is called the dry lake bed method. I want to get this bowl to look like a dry lake bed. Meaning it's going to have a cracked surface. It looks like the surface of Mars or a riverbed where there's not quite enough water to get it wet, but it is, you know, moist earth. But the sun has kind of cracked and bleached it a little bit. And I don't know if you guys can see white water and white plaster, but it is starting to sink a little bit slower as this water gets more saturated. I'm just trying to sprinkle this in. It is the process. It does take time. But really, this stuff doesn't start counting down until you start mixing. So, and this actually, you're supposed to soak the plaster in the water before you start mixing it a little bit. You let it get to dry lake bed, and you let it sit for a minute or two. I think I'll be able to do that because my paint will still be drying.
Ooh, beady-eyed Brat just got here. She said, I made it.
What's
Hooray!
What just happened?
Beady-eyed Brat just made it. Kim.
Yeah, a lot of the same folks from last night, and that's good because they asked me to do this. Otherwise, I'd be on my couch eating Cheetos. Probably not. I'd still have to mold this guy.
Cheetos. Or hanging out with the wife eating fudge.
I have a lot of fudge. I don't have any Cheetos. I'm not really a big Cheetos fan. Not even sure why I said that. All right, I am sprinkling with a purpose. A mad sprinkler. And I'm getting that buildup just a little bit now because it's sinking a lot slower. This This is a good sized batch of plaster. I hope to get everything but the beauty coat done on this guy.
Sorry, I have pro wrestlers upstairs.
And I will end up having to mix up another batch of plaster. I won't get this all done in one, but it'll be close. And my last batch is really just going to be to smooth it out.
Do you have enough plaster? Looks like you're almost empty.
Yeah, I did the math, and I've done 5 molds out of this bag, one-piece molds. So I'll have enough to do this.
Oh, here's a good question. Chandra Huard, she asks, where can you purchase the Hydrocal, and is it available in small amounts?
No, it's available in 100-pound bags. And a 100-pound bag is going to make you 2 to 3 two-piece mask molds.
Oh, wow.
So let me just settle down here a little bit so you guys can hopefully see that dry lake bed. See this cracked look right here? That's what you want this surface to look like. And as I sprinkle this onto the surface, it gets absorbed, and I am slowly getting that dry lake bed look. Now, I have probably done this, I don't know, I bet I've made 1,000 or 2 batches of plaster in my time. But it's something that you will get a feel for.
Now, it looks like you can get Hydrocal at the ceramics places, from what I'm finding.
It's a ceramic supply store, the same as you get your clay from. They will have either U.S. pottery plaster, Hydrocal, or Ultracal. Normally I like Ultracal. I happen to have Hydrocal today. Hydrocal white. There's also statuary Hydrocal, which I'm not using. That is good for outdoors.
And how much would you say a 100-pound bag would run?
$30, $35. It's not bad. All right, so here is I'm going to touch my black. Oh, see, now my black is dry. I got nothing on me, so that's great. But I am going to let this sit just a little bit. And what it's doing is that I'll have less lumps this way. It'll be easier to mix. That plaster is sucking the water from around it into the plaster, which is what I want. And it's probably sat a minute, minute and a half, and they say 2 to 3 minutes. Some folks say 5 minutes. I think that's crazy. I worry about application time if I do that. But I do have my burlap on standby. I've got my brush on standby, ready to go. I have lubed my eyes up. I have sprayed my skull, so I'm as ready as I can be. I'm going to go ahead and start mixing this. Now that I've let it stand, it's a lot easier to mix. It kind of soaked the lumps out of itself. Now, ideally, I would have a vibrating table once I pour this mold up, you know, to get air bubbles out. I just kind of shake the bucket, and that does a good job.
Now, if you wanted to make a vibrating table, what would you use?
I would screw a little orbital sander to the bottom of a table.
That's a good idea.
And put it on a Christmas tree button. All right, so here it is. We are starting. That way I can step on it and turn on the vibrating table, then turn it off. If you're doing a smaller mold, it's much more important to have that kind of vibrating table.
Gotcha.
Not with these big ones. I can look and see air bubbles in this. I'm going to make sure I poke it into the nose. I don't really want to brush and run it across. That's going to leave you air gaps. I want to do more dabbing and jabbing. And I don't care if all this plaster dies in the bucket. What I absolutely have to do right now is cover my whole sculpt. And I am much more dabbing it on and moving it around a little bit. I'm going back to get more on my brush than I am worried about smearing it around. I got a whole bucket full of this stuff. I'm not going to run out. I don't have to make every little bit spread around. Really, I just want to get the sculpt covered. That is what's important to me, getting this sculpt covered. And I'll get it covered with a thicker layer by dabbing on one brush full at a time like this than I will by spreading it around. Because if I just use the brush to touch everywhere, I know how thick that layer is. I'm building up about a 1/16 of an inch at a time. If I don't do that, if I smear it around, I'll have thick spots and thin spots. I don't want that. So it's grab a bit, think about a dog drinking water. You stick your tongue in there and you scoop it out and you just put it, throw it in your mouth. That's what I'm doing with the plaster. Scooping it out, I'm throwing it onto the surface of the mold. But I am jabbing it down in those sculpting spots to make sure I get good coverage. All right, and I don't know if you guys can see, but as I do a second layer with the brush, it's actually just getting thicker. It's not running away. It is building up. Now on these vertical areas, yeah, it's kind of running down the sides, but it's still adding thickness. I want to be adding thickness this whole time. Adding thickness.
Now, Logan Roush asks, have you ever had issues with the plaster powder absorbing moisture from the air and becoming unusable, or is it pretty hard for that to happen?
It's pretty easy for that to happen. But I live in Texas, so I have less moisture in the air than most, but I also keep it in a Tupperware container. I don't keep it in the bag it came in. I pour it into a big Tupperware container with a lid. It's the kind that's used for dog food and storing dog food. So that's what I keep my plaster in. It'll hold a 100-pound bag at a time because it's meant to hold a 100-pound bag of dog food. And it's got a lid that locks down and seals out the moisture. And you can see that as I put my brush on, it builds up a layer. It builds up a little more thickness each time I lay that brush down. I'm extending the area that is thicker.
Looks like it's starting to get harder.
And it's not, it just has good properties. As I work through this mold, it'll get thicker and thicker and thicker. If I keep working it a lot, when it's too thick, it'll weaken it.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of have to get the playing with it stages figured out. And once you start molding, I don't have time to mess around. I'm on a time limit here. And this stuff sets up in about 10-15 minutes. Unlike Ultracal 30, which will set up in 30-35 minutes. I did use cold water, so that's going to slow it set a little bit. Hot water will actually give you a little bit stronger plaster, but I might only get 5 minutes of working time. And that is not enough for this guy. And I'm really close to being able to do my burlap. Because you can see how distorted my sculpt is. It's distorted because you can't see the features of it anymore. That's because I have enough plaster on there. And you want to keep mixing your plaster every now and then. Keep it live is what they call it. I want to keep it alive. It'll start to kick on the bottom, and that will make it go faster on you. So I really am just trying to dab this on, thicken it up. In any area, I want to get it as close to even as possible. I wanted to fill those eyes right away. I wanted to go under the nose right away and fill in those nostrils. I'm filling in the holes of the ears right away, because that's where the fabric is going to have a hard time bending to get down into. So if I can just go ahead and have that done with plaster, my fabric can go over the top and just hold it all down. I had a lot of little surface cracks on one of the molds I did recently, and I was not a fan of that. So I went back and I was treating this just like I would treat Ultracal. And it's a little bit different. It's a different plaster. It doesn't like the layers so much. The disparity between the two temperatures causes surface cracks.
How did you fix it?
I mixed up a real small batch and just ran my finger along that crack with a little bit of plaster on it. And that filled in the seam, and I wiped away the rest.
Now, one thing I saw Biddy Mold do is they would take one of those kidneys.
One of those what?
The kidney, the little, either, I think it was a metal kidney.
Yeah.
And they were mixing the Hydrocal in the water as they needed it. It seemed like one of the videos that they had, it was one of their dress form videos. So that looked pretty interesting, and they looked like they were trying to kind of fill cracks and low spots when they pulled the mold.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can, if you're fixing it, that's a little bit different than doing that from the outset. But yeah. And I am going this to the edge of my mold. I'm pushing it in. That is super saturated with plaster. And I have laid it on there, and I'm making sure that I smooth it down. Grab me another piece of burlap. And I made sure that that was as pretty much as smooth as I can get it. And I'll even take some here with my hand just to fill in by this ear. I was kind of working on the side near me a little bit, so I didn't like how that ear was a little not as well done as this side. But now I'm sure when I put this on, it is ready to go. Giggity-goo.
Imler FX says, didn't you say before that Hydrocal wicks latex better, or is that Ultracal?
Hydrocal actually wicks a little better. You'll get a thicker pull faster with the dwelling technique from Hydrocal. Ultracal takes a little more time to build up that skin.
And you can get Ultracal at a ceramic supply store as well?
Most of them. Ultracal's a little bit harder to find. Just a little bit harder to find.
Gotcha. And then Kim B.I. Brat asks, if the plaster starts to thicken, can you add water to slow it down, or will it just keep going?
Let it go. Let it go. It's going to want to keep going, and you should want to let it. If you add too much water to it, you're going to weaken it. And you hopefully did it to the dry lake bed theory at first, and that is how much water it ought to have. So if you add too much water to it, like I don't mind brushing it down with a little bit of water in order to smooth it out, but I don't want to flat out pour water in this and try and mix it so it goes thinner. On your last coat, as an hour of desperation, you don't want to mix another batch. Okay, but that's your exterior coat. That's not right up against the face. And what I'm doing now is I'm just taking my hand, and the tips of the ears they have not been covered yet by plaster. Well, they've been painted, but they don't have a good thick coat on them.
It looks
And
like
now
you
they're
already
going
have
to have a nice thick coat. And this doesn't heat up like Ultracal does. Ultracal gets ridiculously hot. You could cook an egg on an Ultracal mold. This, not as much.
Looks like you've already wrecked one of the latex gloves. Is that from the
Yeah, that's why I use hand lotion and latex gloves.
Gotcha.
I've actually wrecked the other one too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it is this plaster. It's not dead. I can still work it a little bit. But I'm just going to call this dead because I don't want a weak plaster at this stage of the mold. Quickly, I'm going to mix up another batch. I'm going to make sure that this will take another batch by getting it nice and smooth and just making sure, because anywhere that there's big peaks in it, big stabby bits, that's a chance for an air bubble. And I don't want those air bubbles. Air bubbles and undercuts are really your two main bad guys. All right.
Ooh, got some more questions coming in. Chandra Huard asks, on average, how long does it take to set the plaster?
This plaster takes about 15 minutes. It does not take very long at all. So you have to work a little bit faster than you do with Ultracal. I'm doing the exact same size batch as I did before.
Now, didn't you say that eventually the plaster will suck the moisture out of the plastic, the barrel, or the bucket?
Yeah, it'll dry it out, just like it leaches it out. So if you leave plaster sitting in there a while, your bucket will fall apart. This bucket will eventually fall apart. I just keep making more plaster buckets.
And Dean Ray asks, why does it get hot?
It's a chemical reaction. It's changing state. It is going from the state of being a liquid into the state of being a solid. And that is a chemical reaction. It is an exothermic reaction. It releases heat. So I'm pretty quickly mixing this other batch. I don't want this plaster to know that it's not the same batch. That's why I'm trying to do this pretty quick. And please, any questions, feel free to ask. I can always answer questions while I'm mixing plaster.
Okay. Where do you get your burlap? And I'm 11, so pardon my bad spelling.
I get my burlap from Home Depot. It's in the garden section. It's outside, and it's in a plastic bag, and it's a 10-yard roll for about 25 bucks. It's a loose weave burlap. It's awesome.
And then ImlerFX asks, if my ceramic supply store doesn't carry Ultracal, is there another good place to buy it?
Try a different ceramic supply store. No, Ultracal 30, it's a industrial material. It's a little bit hard to find. Of everything you need, it's the hardest to find. But you can use Hydrocal. You can use, other stuff. I just think that Ultracal's the best. Work to find it. If you can find a place within a 2 or 3 hour drive of you, go there. If you're near a big city, they'll have it. There's a place in your town that has it. It's probably a ceramic supply place. You have to do a little bit of due diligence, look at their website, and find out. If you want to ask me on Facebook or something, you know, I live in this town or within an hour away from this big town, where can I buy Ultracal? I can probably help you find it. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to Google search and find it. So I want you to at least try before you wuss out and ask me. Yeah, sucker. So I'm getting close. I can tell because I've got a little bit of plaster mounding up. Getting close to my dry lake bed that I'm looking for. I see a little bit of dry lake bed happening. I want to have a lot of dry lake bed happening because dry lake beds are awesome.
Dean Ray has a question. This is a question I've been wondering because I'm about to move into a place I can actually set up shop in. Having OCD and trying to do molding, should I just expect one corner of the shop to stay messy? That can be easy to clean up, right?
No, don't expect one corner. Expect this white powder to be everywhere because it's going to land on the floor and you're going to walk in it and you're going to want chips. So you're going to go in the other room to get yourself some chips and you're going to drag that white powder with you. So, no, if you want to be an effects artist, it's very hard to do this and be OCD about cleanliness. It's a dusty game, you know. Clay is mud. Clay also leaves dust. Plaster leaves dust. Make resin molds. You can do that pretty neatly. Resin's not a big deal. So I've got a real perfect dry lake bed going on right now here. That you guys can kind of see that nice texture that I have. And while I put my gloves on, I'm letting it soak in. That's going to keep me from having to fight a lot of lumps like I do with Ultracal 30. That's the upside of Hydrocal. The mixing is easier. All right, so but this is now nice and firm to the touch. My nose is almost exposed, so I want to make sure I put more on that. I have burlap everywhere except for the ear tips. It went all the way around the head. And the nose doesn't have any burlap on it, and the tips of the ears don't, about this much of the ears don't have burlap. That's what the camera on for mixing. About that much of the ear doesn't have burlap. Not a big deal. This batch right here is going to fix that. I'm going to go ahead and start mixing my batch up. Mix my batch up. Mix my batch up.
Patrick Barberry here, he's like Aberdeen, Maryland, and so I responded. I found 3 in the area.
There you go. See how that works? Hello, Patrick. Patrick owns and runs Legends of the Fog up in Maryland in the Aberdeen, Bel Air area, and that is an awesome show that I had the pleasure of going to see. Aberdeen is also my hometown. I grew up right in Aberdeen and Haverty Grace.
Right on.
So, very interesting area. Back then, there were really no good haunted houses. I had to drive 2 hours to go work at Jason's Woods, which was a haunt near us. But in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Heck of a drive to go work at a haunt. But I knew what I wanted to do, so I did it.
Oh, this is interesting because Curtis Grant says, what do you recommend for an 11-year-old to use to cast instead of Ultracal?
At 11, you're going to make a giant mess. But you're also going to be pretty poor because I doubt you have a job with a lot of money rolling in. Plaster is the cheapest, but it is also the messiest. So if your parents are helping to fund you, then they might spring for you to start making some resin molds. In which case, get a gallon of Easy Flow 60 or Easy Flow 120 and use that to make your first couple of mass molds. And start small. You know, you want to show to whoever is funding you doing this, including yourself, that that you're serious. And the way to show that is to do a few small things. You know, make a few small things and then move up from there. Don't start with a two-piece mold. I beg you, start with a one-piece mold. It's way smarter. It's way easier. You will be able to build on your successes because your first two-piece mold probably is going to suck. Mine did. My first two-piece mold really sucked. I filled it full of latex and it leaked like it was a sprinkler. And that is some expensive puddles. And do start with latex before you go into silicone mask making, because a latex puddle is about $10, $12 if it's a big one. A silicone puddle that's a big one is about $90 because silicone is expensive, very expensive. So start small, work your way up. That's the safe way to grow. Is it conservative? Yes. Is it successful? Yes. Prove to yourself you can be successful in small batches, and then you will be more confident as you do bigger projects. I wish YouTube was around when I was 11. We had Fangora magazine, and that was about it. And you can't learn a lot from Fangora magazine when it comes out once a month. And if the issue had boobs in it, I wasn't allowed to have that issue. And, you know, there's probably a boob in every second or third Fangora magazine. Now, normally it's a chest and the woman's decapitated or something like that, so it's not like, you know, it's explicit boobs or anything. There just happens to be a boob there. I seem to go off on tangents. My apologies. Let's get back to mold making. Let us not talk about decapitated boobs. Because it's almost Christmas.
Well, I'm sure there's decapitated boobs somewhere for Christmas. Somebody might have asked for a decapitated boob for Christmas.
You know what? The more I study old world Christmas traditions, I'm willing to bet you're right. Because there are some humdingers of Christmas traditions. Old school Christmas traditions. The new ones rarely involve boobs or decapitation.
Give me an example.
Gryla. Gryla was a German Christmas figure, much like Krampus, who was supposed to scare kids and take them away. But Gryla just ate them. She would just go in the room and eat the children. Children were so afraid of Gryla that in the 1780s, the German government passed a law saying it's illegal to threaten your children with Gryla. They outlawed the boogeyman. That is cool.
Wow.
In one of the Norwegian countries, I forget which one it is, Santa is accompanied by 8 to 11 black men. And aside from just hang out with him and follow him around and help him with stuff, he is followed around by 7 to 11 black men. Which, they don't really explain why, but he's got a gang with him. That's kind of cool. Or he's going to start like a North Pole basketball team. And in that country, it is a very common practice for white people to dress up in blackface for Christmas as these 7 to 8 black men who wear bright purple and yellow clothing. Yeah, it's I'm sure it's an unintentional racist riot. Not the kind of riots that we have. I mean riot as in funny. But yeah, Christmas is weird. So Christy, are you Googling that?
I already Googled it. I found Gryla on Wikipedia, and if anybody wants to know the spelling, it's Gryla.
Google Santa accompanied by black men. And it should tell you the rest of the legend.
I'm trying to remember how to spell accompanied. Accompanied.
All right, so I have enough buildup now up here around the nose. I'm confident that I can put on burlap and not have big air bubbles there. But I am just
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam. There you go. That's that's kind of a little bit racist and weird. So, building up that plaster around the nose so that I can take this piece of burlap and put it right there. And now I'm going to get more burlap and build it, build it, build it. I have found with Ultracal, I can keep a brush no problem. With Hydrocal, it sets fast enough, I am unable to keep my brush from dying. So I kill a lot of brushes when I'm doing Hydrocal molds. Like my last brush, I'll have to throw away. This brush, I'm going to have to throw away. I just don't have the time to stop and wash it out. Now, remember I had a good buildup of plaster right there up against the face before I ever started doing any burlap. I do not want the burlap to come in contact with the sculpt. The burlap should only contact plaster. Imagine if there was burlap showing through and the latex you pour into the mold got caught up in that burlap weave. That would be a mess. All right, I'm going to focus right now on thickening up this part of the mold, which is going to be an edge of the mold down here. And you kind of have to know the material a little bit to know at what stage you do what with it. I know that right now it's almost past the burlap stage. I could work burlap into it, but it's a lot easier right now with my hand to just sort of trowel it on with my hand. And I can cup my hand or flatten out my hand to get it to smooth out in between my hand and the mold to leave me a nice even layer.
Oh, Kim BDI Brat says, rat, ceramic shops for me are an hour and a half north to Tulsa or 3 hours south to your neck of the woods.
In that case, then, come down to Trinity Ceramic, and we'll go out to lunch. Just let me know when you're coming.
Hey!
I'll buy your lunch, you buy your plaster.
Right on. A reason to go down to Dallas.
There you go. And if you make it down, I'll give you a tour through Dark Hour and show you my shop over there.
Just give me advance notice.
Well, I'm there a lot, so you don't need too much advance notice. It's not like I'm not going to be there, you know. You know, actually in January, though, I am going on a cruise. I went on a cruise last year, and I loved it. It was my first real non-working kind of vacation. And my wife was very worried I wouldn't be able to relax. Turns out I can. Half an hour in, she found me in a hot tub with an ice cream cone. I like cruises.
Hot tub with an ice cream cone. Awesome.
Yep. All right, so you can see how I've got this great cream consistency right now. And it's like I'm frosting a cake. I'm just smoothing and smoothing and smoothing. Now, I really want this to be flat. So I don't have enough material right now to make it as flat as I want up there. But that is the next thing I'm going to do, is get this to be flat. So I have to make another batch of plaster. I don't want it sitting right on this nose when I flip it over to pour it up. So I have to build up so it's sitting on a good flat spot. And since I don't mind working with it at this late stage when it's almost setting up, because I know I don't need it to be as strong as I need the face to be strong. The face needs so much strength because you're literally coating it in rubber and then pulling that off. And it's got to stand up to that. So I am smoothing out, smoothing out, smoothing out. Now I moved on to a plastic scraper. I get these at Harbor Freight. There's like 20 of them in a pack for $3 or $4. They're awesome. I use them for sculpting. I use them for mold making. They're very nice.
Not bad.
So I have this pretty smooth. I don't need it perfectly smooth. I'm going to cheat a bit and smooth out down here a lot along the bottom edge because I don't want to mess with that again. I'm going to add plaster up here so I know I can re-smooth that.
Now, while you're doing that, I got a couple things here. Dean Ray, I want decapitated boobs for Christmas. Just saying.
That's good for you. Put it on your list. Santa will get to you in good time.
And Chandra asks, you have mentioned different materials for molding. Would you have a list we can download?
I don't. Typing is so hard. I don't. But I can probably point you guys. I'll go back when this video is posted on YouTube, and I'll post some links in the description which can help you out. I might as well just make like a mold making and casting ebook.
Oh, there you go.
That's what I'll probably end up having to do.
Now, Logan asks, on the brush note, thank you so much for the Harbor Freight tip. It is an hour drive for me, but well worth it for the savings you get on brushes.
Yeah, this box of brushes is what he's talking about here. You can pick these up for as little as $6, and there's 36 brushes in there. So that's a good deal. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to re-lotion my hands and start mixing one more batch of plaster, which will finish out this mold.
Okay.
Where are we time-wise? Am I an hour in already?
Well, let me see. We are at an hour, just over an hour.
Okay, great. So I'm on track. I will have this done in an hour and a half, 2 hours. So, hooray.
And on the YouTube home front, Eddie Bryant says, yay, racism!
Not yay, racism. Oh, look, racism. It's very different.
Yeah, I was looking it up, and apparently the black men that are with him are Moors from Spain.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Santa in Amsterdam, he lives in Spain. To us, he lives in the North Pole. But if you're from Amsterdam, you think that Santa lives in Spain. That's why he has his posse come with him to help.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
So here's a fresh bag of Hydrocal.
Fresh 100-pound bag of Hydrocal. And let's see. Curtis Grant says, yeah, that's already happened with silicone and latex because I have a 3-year-old brother. How can I get plaster of Paris off a concrete floor? My parents want to know because Halloween prep happens in the garage. My parents don't know a lot about makeup, and I'm the only one that does it. Yes, my name is Lucas Curtis. It is just the account name.
Well, what you can do is you can actually coat your garage floor in something like lace out down some cardboard boxes. That'll help. On my whole floor, I have anti-fatigue mats. I did my whole floor in here. That way, if I drop a mold, it doesn't break. And I'm in here a lot, and it's a concrete floor. It's a lot more comfy.
And Kim BDI Brat says it's a deal.
There you go. Just give me a heads up. Hopefully we are Facebook friends. If not, look me up. I'm pretty easy to find. I can't really hide from anybody. So, and I think I can accomplish what I want to accomplish with, you know, one of these things of water, basically.
And Chandra thanked you for the information.
No problem. All right, mixing up this batch of plaster. Same process. I am sprinkling it in and sprinkling it in and sprinkling it in. I'm not going to move the camera this time because you guys have seen this a few times already.
And Imler FX wants to know what size those brushes are.
These are 1-inch chip brushes, and they are the best in the frickin' business. I love them. Whenever I'm doing any kind of stone or plaster work or clay work, I want a natural bristle brush, and that's what this is. The brushes that are plastic, they're poly brushes, I hate them because the material doesn't want to stick to them. So it's real hard to move it around. But these natural bristle brushes, boy, say that 3 times fast. They really hold the material well. They're the best to dry brush with when I'm painting. These Harbor Freight brushes, if they cost twice as much, I'd still buy them because they're also a good product.
Now with that, Kim asks, I go through brushes like crazy, painting my paper mache jack-o'-lanterns because I have to pounce the paint down into the texture. I use latex house paint. Would you say those brushes would work for me?
They would work amazing, and I dare say, once you go Harbor Freight for brushes, you will not go back. And as you have heard previously on the video, it is worth the drive if you have to drive a little bit. But also, they have very reasonable shipping, so you can order from them online. I have done that just so I didn't have to drive there, and it's 5 minutes away from me.
Now they also have some, on occasion, not very often, but sometimes you can get free shipping.
Yeah, they, promos and stuff. Sign up for their emails, and that's something they offer their email people quite a bit. There's 3 things that I buy all the time at Harbor Freight. They're $10 Quick Connect airbrushes. I use one every single time I do makeup, and it's $10, and I can change colors faster than any other kind of airbrush I know. Really good for stencil work and basing out. I also use those plastic scrapers all the time. I buy my gloves from Harbor Freight, and I also buy my brushes there.
And if you go on their website right now, you can get a multifunction power tool for $5.
Woohoo! That's the oscillating power tool, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I have one of those.
That would make a good motor for the table.
Yes, indeed. Just screw one of those blades down to your table, and that way when the tool shakes it, it shakes up your table.
Brilliant idea.
All right, so I am, and it was yours! Right here, I have my cracked earth texture. Look at how cracky and earthy that is. You really see the cracks over here showing up. You see the cracks all along here showing up. So I'm letting that set a bit while I put on my gloves. And I'm an extra large hand, and I only have medium gloves left. So I'm actually due a trip to Harbor Freight because I had a lot of helpers in the shop who had medium hands, which I do not. But I'm like, well, I still have gloves. I might just take these to work and leave these at work and abscond with some XL gloves. Because Crystal, who works in our mold room, she's awesome, very talented, but she has tiny hands, and she would love these gloves. Me, I'm kind of stretched up. You can see my skin texture, all my skin pores you can see through these gloves. All right, I will mix this up now. It has sat a little bit. It's soaked in. But it's also a little too thin for me to use right now. It's a little too thin for me to pile up here and have it stay. I am going to use it everywhere I have to smooth out a little bit. I really don't want to kill another brush. That's why I'm just putting it on with my hand. But in a fashion where I can just smooth this out.
And Chandra says, has Harbor Freight offered to give you any free stuff yet?
No, I doubt my tiny viewer contingent even makes a dent. I did notice, however, they started advertising on my YouTube videos. So at least they're noticing. You know, if you watch one of my videos, one of the older ones, you might get a Harbor Freight ad that pops up.
I wonder how that works.
They figure out, you know, they have people who tell them this is who you should advertise on and who you shouldn't advertise on. And if I ever use Harbor Freight as a keyword, they'll probably want to they'll watch the video first to see if I'm, you know, being nice to them or being mean to them, and then they will advertise on it because you're already keying in on Harbor Freight. And I have done that a couple of times on a few of my videos where I mention them a lot. You might as well just put them on the front there, you know. All right, and I'm just using burlap because it's too thin. It's still too thin to build up. But if I put it in the burlap, I can build the burlap up. And remember, I'm trying to get this flat because this is the bottom of the mold. It's going to flip over, and this will be the bottom. I mean, already my middle is blown out. Bleh. Oh, well.
Uh-oh.
So I'm using the burlap to quickly build this up, even though the plaster is still on the thin side.
Now, Curtis Grant asks, what material should I use for an old person prosthetic? Can you make... Oh.
Boy, for a simple prosthetic, I really like silicone because you can have it banged out and done in a fast amount of time. With foam latex, there's an oven involved. You have to then use an Hydrocal mold. You can mold silicone prosthetics in almost any kind of mold. So there's the advantage of being able to mold silicone in plaster or resin or anything, really. Because the silicone is a chemical change, it's going to cure no matter what. The latex is a moisture change. The moisture has to have some place to go. That's why your latex won't dry out inside of a bucket or a plastic bucket, but it will dry out in a plaster mold as long as there's an open top and air can move around. So I would use silicone, and I'm sending you on an expensive path to do that, but you're paying in speed and time. There's good, fast, and cheap. You can always pick two. And silicone is pretty good, pretty fast, not cheap.
And he also asks, can you make a video for me on how to sculpt an old person prosthetic? And my name is just Lucas. Sorry about that.
All right. I have a very good friend who he likes a band. Their name is like Death Pope, but this guy looks like the Pope. I don't even know the band's name. But he kind of showed me this guy and said, please make me this mask. And I had a lot of stuff on my docket, but David Wheat, I am going to be sculpting your, I think Papa is the character's name. And he looks like an evil pope. So I am going to be sculpting an old man head. It's an old man that then wears a pope costume. So yes, when I do that sculpt, I'll make sure I video it, Lucas. And I'm waiting for my plaster to get thicker. That's all I'm doing. Because I want to make this nice and flat. Clean off my scraper here. That's all rock now.
Oh, and Jesse Campbell says, Harbor Freight frequent flyer miles.
You know what? I was in the club for a long time with Harbor Freight. I let my club membership expire just because I wasn't good at bringing the flyer for the club in with me, so I didn't always get the deals I should have. But if you are a person who is good at that kind of stuff, and I'll remember to bring this flyer with me when I go, join that club. It's a good deal. I am not that organized of an entity.
It's better when they have something you can stick on your keychain.
Yes, that's nice. Okay. Hey, look, Ed Gannon.
Hey.
How's it going, Ed?
Hi, man. How you doing?
Good, good. I'm glad to see that you're not still at work. Ed works harder than just about anybody I know. And he's fairly effective. Most of the people that I know that work that hard do it for a reason, because they have to, because they're not effective. Ed can actually get some crap done.
Well, thank you, sir.
Bravo!
Yay!
So, this is my... actually, the whole reason I sculpted this was because at lunch, Ed, one day you said, "Are you going to do an elf mask?"
Ah.
I guess I am. So, I think with the paint job, it's going to go elf or goblin. But I think it will make a nice elf mask for... all right, so just in the time you were talking, look at how thick that is now. It's not really even running. So now I can really start troweling it on.
Not to be confused with trolling.
That's right. I'll leave that to
Trolling bad, troweling good.
I'll leave that to professionals like Michael Edwards. He's a troll, man. He pokes ant piles.
Oh, the Phantom says the band is called Ghost BC.
Okay, that sounds familiar. Are you a fan, Mr. Phantom?
I don't know them.
I guess if your name was Phantom, you should be a fan of a band named Ghost.
Yeah, true. That's a good point. And then Brulek, I'm sorry. Hi, Alan. How much dry Hydrocal would you say you need for that sculpt? Thank you. Love all your vids. Bruce.
Okay, I tend to overmold. My molds are normally thicker than most people's molds because I want my molds to live, and I am hard on things. So I do mine a little thicker than most. But for this sculpt here, you can probably get this with a third of a bag. A bag being 100 pounds, so you're looking at maybe 25, 30 pounds of Hydrocal.
Gotcha.
And while it's in this great slurry state, I am just building up the top here. And now to make it even more stable, I'm coming off the sides of that peak that I did.
Oh, poor Lucas. He's burnt himself with UltraCal. Doesn't feel good.
Yeah, that stuff gets really hot. It's that chemical change that I was talking about. You can fry an egg on it. It is very warm. You can actually mix it so thick and so hot that it explodes. It cracks apart. Don't do that.
Wow.
Stay with those factory guidelines, kids.
Good to know.
So we have some hardcore people who were here yesterday and they're back. Thank you guys for spending some holiday time with me. Making monsters. Alright, so this is my last real scoop I'm going to get out of this bucket. I'm looking at this. It's not quite as flat as I would like. My table is fairly flat. And I have a cheat sheet I'm going to use to tell me how flat this is. I know I need some right here. I know I need some right here. Because I want this flat so when I have this mold flipped over, it does me right. And I had to build up this a lot. I mean, this is a really deep mold. You can see how tall it is because the nose I had on the sculpt. If I had had a less of a nose, I could have gotten away with less of a mold. But that most extended point is what I had to build off of.
Oh, Kelsing, and I'm not gonna try to butcher your name today. Says hello, just tuned in.
Hey. Well, I'm doing this tonight because you guys asked for it. And I want this to be flat because I don't want issues with me pouring this sucker up. Some molds you have to kind of put on their top and then tape them to a chair, you know, because they're not stable, or pile clay around them. And I have made many molds like that. I told you I had a cheat sheet. Here is my cheat sheet, a little piece of that core flute plastic. I'm pretending this is a table, and I'm taking a look.
Are you gonna use the level?
I don't have a level, Ed. I'm not going to use no level. Ed tried using a level in the haunt. I tried to hide it on him. Don't need no stinking level.
Like, yeah, that looks level to me.
That's how I do it. All right, so now all of this plaster is at this great soft consistency where I can clean up this mold quite a bit by, I'm using that burlap that I had set aside for it, and I'm using this as like a scouring pad to kind of smooth out this mold. I don't want to cut myself. The mold can get very jagged. Yes, I can see them. I cannot see them often because I'm not looking at the screen a lot.
Gotcha.
Christy?
Yeah, because I can only see mine. That's why I was asking.
Christy, can you see Ed's typing when he types in? Can you see these?
Oh, he's typing something in chat. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
And I'm a caveman. I'm not very good at this.
Yeah, I'm manning the comments from Facebook and YouTube.
That's what it was. Okay.
All right. So now I have this mold done here. I have my flat top right here. This is going to cure a little bit more. This is warm, but it's not hot. Ultracal, I couldn't keep my hands on it like this. That's how different Ultracal is as a material. It just catalyzes faster, I think, or at least a stronger reaction. It releases a lot more heat.
Now, Lucas is asking, do you recommend Monster Clay 5 pounds or 25 pounds?
If you're doing prosthetics, 5 pounds is plenty. If you're doing a mask, you'll want 25 pounds. This is the head form. This is the clay that was around the head form, making that little bit of a seal.
Lucas asks, where can I get an armature head to sculpt on that's not from Monster Makers or that I can have to cast? And I do decapitations. My parents let me do that because it's my talent.
Okay.
He's 11, Ed, just so you know.
Okay, that sounds better.
Oh, wow, that popped right off, didn't it?
David Mosher Effects, M-O-S-H-E-R. David Mosher, he is who I got this lovely form from. Yeah, I actually got it out of there pretty simple. That's the head form from them. Normally it's all one color. Plaster does not stick to it at all, which is lovely. And it demolded nice and easy. But I did leave the whole neck open so I could. And I used a screwdriver over on this side. So that worked out pretty well. Long story short, guys, this is the mold.
That was pretty easy. That was almost too easy. It's deceptive.
What I was talking about before, about I'm going to put a clay wall in here, I'm going to put plaster here so that everything is up to this level so I can fill this with plaster. Because right now I can only fill it to this point with plaster and it would pour out. So I'm going to put a little wall in here and do a plaster wall on this side that will allow me to fill it up all the way to the top here.
Gotcha.
But for now, I'll pull some clay out of the mold. I'm not going to pull all of it out tonight because I rarely do. Let me grab a couple tools.
Now, Imler FX wants to know if the painting video is going to be tomorrow.
Dude, I need a break. You're killing me here. You're a slave driver. No, I will not do a painting video tomorrow because to do that, I'd have to have it full of latex tonight for it to dry. Half masks take about 12 hours or so because they're pretty open. This is actually a really open mold, which is part of the plan as far as why I've made them this way and made the choices that I made. But no, this sucker probably won't even get poured up for a week. But I have other molds that I have made, and they are outside in my van right now, and I might get latex in one of them tomorrow. Odds are good, but it won't be until Wednesday or so that I'd be able. But in all honesty, I have a show coming up on Friday night, so my guess is Sunday night you might see a painting video from me. I might do a Google chat on painting if people would like to see that.
Yeah, that's something you haven't done lately.
Well, I've been doing a lot of sculpting and molding and getting ready for all of that. You need the molds done in order to lay that groundwork. And you know, obviously you need sculpts done too, or else you don't have anything to paint.
True.
But that is something that painting, it has to happen so fast for me, that part of the finishing of it, I don't often get a chance to record it. And when I'm doing this, normally I'm using wooden tools. Wooden tools will not chip the plaster as easily. A metal tool is stronger than the stone, and it's going to chip it. So, but I can take these wooden tools and start a pry process and just start getting some clay out. I also have here a rasp. These edges that were up against the table, they're pretty sharp. I'm going to rasp those down in order to make them not all cutty and stabby. But I'll do that in a bit. First, I want to get some clay out of the mold. Any questions, Christy?
Yes. Phantom, is gelatin a decent alternative for silicone when making prosthetics?
Yes. Yeah, it is, actually. I have a making prosthetics with gelatin video, actually. It's not on my YouTube channel. It's on, but if you search my name, you'll find it. It's on Yard Haunter Steve's YouTube channel. So I used to hold classes, and he came to my class, and he recorded that one for me. So that is on Yard Haunter Steve's YouTube channel, making gelatin prosthetics.
I think I remember that one.
If you haven't done it before.
And he also asks, and Ghost BC doesn't make the greatest music, but they put on a good show.
I could kind of tell that by looking at them, believe it or not. I didn't think they were going to be the next Wayne Newton or anything.
And then Mutter, I've seen people insert PVC pipe to use as a flat stand. Have you tried something like that instead of lots and lots of plaster?
No, I already have plaster, and I'm already making the mold. I might as well just finish this one process and do a little bit more of it. That's my thinking, rather than start with something else and then try and do another process. I just kind of like doing it with plaster. And again, see how nice this mold sits? You know, I can fill this up with latex, and I don't worry about it tipping over necessarily. It's pretty stable. But also, this is a one-piece mold. Since it's a one-piece mold, I'm not going to be moving it around a lot. It's going to find a place to live. I'm going to fill it up with latex. I'm going to dump it out. A two-piece mold, you have to move around a lot because the two halves have to come apart and come together, come apart, come together. You're carrying a lot of rock around. And that just isn't the case with the one-piece mold.
It's a Christmas miracle.
Yeah. Why is Alan making one-piece mass molds now? Well, he's old and doesn't like lifting heavy things. His days of 300-pound molds are over.
It's a good workout.
Up until this summer, I had a mold that was every bit of 400 pounds in my backyard. I made a full-size cave troll head.
Did you finally find a home for it?
I broke it up with a sledgehammer and sent it on its way. I had to space out the throwing away of it over 7 different trips of the garbage man because they're not going to pick up a bag that weighs 300 pounds and it's got 1 rock in it. So now I'm just pulling mud out of here, which is clay. I will power wash this sucker out tomorrow, but you can see that this is the guy's nose. This is the forehead that's kind of coming out now. And I'm using my wire loop tool. I'm being very careful not to touch the plaster, but I'm getting out some ribbons. And sometimes when you do that, you can just fold the clay, and now that clay has a place to go, it comes out a little bit easier. That's not necessarily happening here, but
that's what the power washer is for.
Yeah, because this clay is water-based. If you use oil-based clay, you have to pick every little speck out of there by hand, which is another reason I'm not as fond of oil-based as I am of water-based. And I can actually kind of fill this mold with water here after a while, and that will soften this clay up enough for me to pick it out a little more. And on the other table, it's like a cooking show now. I have a mold that was in process of doing that. I'm going to switch this out and put this over here because this is not a fun time to clean out this mold. I'll grab my other mold.
And while you're doing that, Lucas says, I casted a head and made it out of plaster. I swear I put mold release on, and the mold I made wouldn't come off, so I had to take a sledgehammer to it after I spent 5 hours trying to get the head out.
Well, yes. You may have put mold release on it, but you may have created a mold lock, in which case, instead of making a mold, you make a lovely garden stone because it doesn't come apart. So you really have to know where that parting line is on your mold so that you can get those 2 halves apart. Was it a 2-piece mold? I hope it was a 2-piece mold. And what was the head that you casted? Because one of the keys to mold making is that if you want a finished piece that's rigid, then you want a flexible mold. Out of this mold, I want to pull a latex mask. My finished piece is flexible. I can have a rigid mold. Plaster is rigid. I also need to mold something that's not rigid. So I don't want to mold a fiberglass head with plaster because neither one of those is going to give. I want to mold a clay sculpture with plaster. I want to mold a foam-filled latex head with plaster. That's how you make masters in order to make multiples of the same mold. So all those are important. But if I want to have a finished product that is fiberglass or a finished product that is resin, I should have a flexible mold like a urethane or a latex or silicone. Whatever your finished product is, flexible or rigid, you want the opposite in your molding material. So now this is full of water, like I was saying, because I was soaking it right before I started that mold. I'm going to dump this in one of my buckets, not into a sink, and I'll get right back with cleaning it out.
Okay. While you're doing that, ImlerFX says, haha, sorry, man. I was the one that brought up the molding idea, too.
He brought up the what?
The molding idea.
Yeah, he's making me work tonight. Slave driver.
Bastard.
And
All right, but in here now, you can see that's just mud. You know, that's going to come out pretty easy.
Famous last words.
And again, it's not going to be, you know, bone clean until I power wash it.
Mm-hmm.
I could take this out to the hose, and the drier the mold is, the faster it's going to wick latex. So this mold here, while it's wet like this, I had this filled with water overnight. It's not going to be good for making a latex mask for a while. It'll be a real thin pull. I really want to dry out this mold. I could put it, you know, in a hot room with a fan on it. That'll get the moisture out of it after a while, like you're kiln drying wood almost. That would help. But I'm going to leave
now,
it
in
here
the case
in the garage.
remember my situation where I was pouring resin into the silicone molds and I was going one after another after another after another? Could that happen this way with pouring silicone over and over and over? Could you have the mold lock like what I had?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Every time that it leaches the moisture from, but in this case, the plaster is getting more moist.
Mm.
You were doing just the opposite.
True. That's
you
good.
were having a flexible material that was silicone, and you're pouring resin into it that becomes a rigid material. And that the heat and the silicone itself was having the oil leached out of it by the resin, because the resin undergoes that chemical change, it heats up, so it's kind of a pain.
I agree.
So you have to kind of either let it rest. There's ways around it, but you can, or then start using a mold release. You normally don't need a mold release with silicone, but if you are doing pull after pull of a resin that leaches out the silicone oil that's in there, well, then you do need it.
Yeah, that's true.
That protective barrier. All right, so this is actually coming out pretty nice, and that is the spray paint is doing the work for me here. You look at that, I can pull that out. You see white mold, and this clay has that green spray paint on it.
Ah. Oh, follow up from Lucas. Let's see. I've tried two-piece mold, and it was plaster with keyholes.
And what were you molding?
We'll probably get that in a little bit. He says, how tall and how wide is the 5-pound tub of monster clay?
5-pound tub? Think about half a loaf of bread.
Mm.
I have one sitting right over there.
And the Phantom asks, when is an injection mold better to use over slush mold, and how complicated is it to make one compared to a mold like this?
This is the simplest kind of mold. This is a one-piece mold. An injection mold is normally a 3-piece mold, meaning that there's this half, another half, and a core. I could make this a 2-piece mold if I put the core back into this, and then where the clay was, that my new material becomes. That's how a foam latex prosthetic works. That's also how a silicone mask works. They have a core that they sculpt on, and the mold goes back around the core. And then the space in between the two gets filled with your material via a giant syringe most of the time. And that process, I got pretty good at it. I've made about 10 different silicone masks. But there are people who are better at it than me, so I'm letting them do it. I don't see a need to jump into that market. And the last thing that the haunted house industry needs is another silicone mask company. I think we're good for those for a while. You've got Immortal Mask doing a great job. CFX is doing a great job. Altered Flesh is doing a great job. And then AEFX Studios, Juan's company, they do great masks. That market is covered. You know, if you need a silicone mask, it's out there. So
Just need to convince them to make them smaller.
or bigger.
Oh, right. In your case, yeah.
Yeah, you have a smaller head than average a little bit. I have a much larger than average head. So if I ever get in the business, I'd be making the bigger and the smaller ones because I think there is a need for that. Very good point, Ed. So you guys can see this is the unfun part of it, basically, where I am just digging out clay out of the mold. I would, at this point, I would go and power wash this. The power washer isn't going to chew through the plaster, but it is going to chew through the clay. And it's going to get it a lot cleaner than my hands will.
I think you have on one of your videos it shows where you were power washing.
Absolutely. I power wash almost all my molds. It's one of the main reasons why I use water-based clay. And I think they're fools if they don't, and they're under a time crunch. Big studios use water-based clay because they're always under a time and money crunch, you know. It's the cheapest clay. It doesn't hold detail as well as oil-based. So your hobbyist sculptor, your guy who's going to sculpt one mask a year, yeah, use oil-based. That's fine. But if you're trying to make a living, you've got to make more than one a year.
Okay, and Kelsang says, for someone just starting out, would you recommend making a smaller sculpture and mold to practice the process, or would you recommend just going on and making your first mask?
Start small, man. Mold something small. Mold a medallion. Sculpt a medallion. One-piece mold. Make a plaster mold of it. Peel that clay out of there. Do a latex cast of that medallion. Make it something you can use for a costume or for haunted wall decoration or something. But make that one small mold. And then work your way up. Then do a bigger piece that's a one-piece mold. Then, after you know the plaster material a little bit better, that's when you can go into making a two-piece mold. You know, the guys who say, well, I've never done this before, but for this Halloween, I'm going to make a full-body werewolf costume with stilts. Well, it's probably going to suck a little bit because you've never done any of it before.
It's going to take forever.
Yeah, and you're going to take a year to do it. Okay, more power to you. But I think you'll learn more. Build it up a little slower, you know. Don't be scared to. If this is something that you want to do, invest the time in learning to do it right. One little thing at a time.
That's very true.
Same is true with, you know, if you want to open your own haunted house. I don't recommend you take out a $500,000 loan from the bank to open your first haunted house. Get 10 cool costumes, borrow a patch of woods from somebody, charge $5 and have a trail. You'll make money your first year.
Ooh.
You're not going to be able to retire, but you'll make some money. And then, you know, a few years down the road from that, maybe you can retire.
Good idea.
Don't open on Thursdays your first year.
They don't open on Thursdays, exactly. Bad idea. Sundays are probably a bad idea too, unless your cast is volunteer. But yeah, the first haunt that I kind of co-owned, I was 15, and there was a farmer, and I said, I want to use this patch of woods to do a haunted house. Can we park in your field? Because I own the land too. You should ask me about that. Sure. But he let me build this little haunted trail, and he sold hot dogs and hot chocolate. And I was going to split the profits with him 50-50 from the show, the $5 trail. And by the end of it, he says, I sold enough hot chocolate and hot dogs. I don't even want the money from the haunted house.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, that was quite the venture. You know, and part of that money is what I moved to Orlando on in order to work at Terror on Church Street.
Nice.
All right, so I'm going to adjust camera angles here a little bit so you guys can really see down inside of this mold.
All right, while you do, I'm going to switch over to the questions on Facebook because I got a few of those.
Okay.
Let's see. Chandra says, here I thought you were a molding machine, Alan.
Oh, well, I don't want to make more than one a day or so. So right here, and I don't know if you guys can see that. I'm going to try and clear it off a little better for you. Is the end of one of the plastic pumpkin teeth that I used in my mold. It kind of sticks out right here. There's one pumpkin tooth right here, another pumpkin tooth. All this little end was inside of the lip. So you didn't see this part of it in the sculpt. It didn't stick out. But now in the mold, that's where these pumpkin teeth are. So I'm going to grab a little pair of pliers and pull them out. Why I use pumpkin teeth and why I love them is because they are tapered. There's no mold lock there. It's not bigger on the end than it is at the base. So often I can pull it out with just my hands, but most of the time I need a little set of pliers. Be right back.
Okay. And then Logan says, Alan's schedule has no mention of that other holiday, just haunt work.
Oh, it's all haunt work. It's always haunt work. Haunted houses are a big part of what I am.
And he also says, once again, thanks for doing the vids, and thanks, Christy, for handling the questions. Merry Xmas to you guys. Thank you.
So I am now an orc dentist. I pulled my first orc tooth. Actually, this is not my first orc tooth. Okay, I pulled many of these out of molds in my time, but they come out pretty easy. And you can see by how clean it is, that's how much of the tooth was sticking out of the sculpt. And all this cruddy part was inside of the sculpt. Wow. So I can pull these guys out.
Oh, sometimes if it was only that easy when you were little to have your baby teeth pulled.
You know what? I have an amazing capacity to forget terrible, terrible things. That's really good. But I don't have any memory of tooth pain. I don't have any memory of losing teeth. I know I broke my arm because I got pictures of me in a cast, but I don't remember anything that it slowed me down from doing. You know? It's just, I have a great capacity to forget terrible, terrible things, which is probably really nice.
Yeah.
But I don't remember, the bad stuff that happened last year. I have no idea what it was. I don't know. Someone will remind me. I'm like, oh, yeah, that did happen. That was terrible. But it's not stuff that I think about. My wife remembers everything. And as much as I think it's awesome, sometimes I think it must be terrible. I don't know if I would have survived childhood if I remembered everything. All right, so the bottom teeth, because there's a chin, are going to be harder to grab. You just don't have as much room to work. But it came out like a champ.
Nice.
So, and there's probably 5 or 6 of those. And remember, this is my orc sculpt. So it had those 2 really big tusks.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
2 that were much bigger than the others. And all these little guys are coming out easy. And you're thinking, wow, this is the way to do it. Easy as pie. But then these guys take a lot more to get out.
Yeah. Is there a plaster on the end of that tooth?
No.
Oh, good.
No, there was a little bit of clay. As it came out, it jabbed the sidewall here and got some clay on it.
Gotcha. Now, Dean Ray says, is the same process that's used for creatures that are puppeteered in films like Pumpkinhead or Alien? Is this the same process?
Yeah, clay sculpt, plaster mold, absolutely. That is how it's done. Just as nowadays you might get, it might be a silicone skin. It's not a foam latex skin, but it's still going to be a plaster mold. Back then, when it was foam latex, that was just the way to go. And I think it still is the way to go. At Dark Hour, we have. I drew a foam latex oven on a napkin, and Ed and a guy named Zach built it. So, that's our foam latex oven that we use, and we still use it. It works awesome.
Nice. And then
Yeah.
Patrick Barbary says Alan would look great in a doll face mask.
That's kind of creepy, but thank you. I hope they're slimming. You know, I'm going to be in a doll face mask. I want it to be a slimming doll face mask. All right, so you guys kind of get a better idea of what cleaning the mold out is like. I'm going to take the camera off here and put you inside the mold, and hopefully you can see there's enough of the skin texture and stuff showing that if I can get the camera off. This is a two-handed job, apparently. There it is. All right. If you look, let me look right in here. See those little bumps? I'm hoping it'll focus. Well, all those little bumps are skin pores that I put in. Up here, maybe you can see lines and ridges that are in there. Each of these, that's a wrinkle in the forehead. That clay pulled out clean, but in between, that's stuck in there just a little bit. This is the eyebrow. You know, these two bumps are the eyes. So here's the forehead, eyes, the nose is down here, and this is where the mouth and the teeth that I pulled out were. But you are now inside of the mold. So, guys, we made a mold. This was just about 2 hours. Tomorrow I will clean these puppies out really nice, and I'll probably start another sculpt tomorrow night if I am lucky. But this has been 2 hours. This has been a one-piece mask mold start to finish. I haven't cleaned it out, but that's going to be with the power washer. I don't want to drag my computer outside near while I'm using the power washer. If you want to see a mold being power washed out, watch my Lobster Boy video on my channel, because that shows the whole process. I start with a sculpt. I make a two-piece mold. I make the mold, take it apart, clean it out with the power washer, and then fill it with latex, and you see everything. It's like 20 minutes long, but it's every part of the process on high speed. So thank you guys for watching and for sharing your evening with me. I will probably be doing a lot more of these and hopefully getting back to some regular YouTube Wednesday videos too as I have more time. That does look good time-wise. So thanks a lot. Thanks, Christy and Ed, for joining. I'm going to stop the broadcast, and y'all have a good night and a Merry Christmas.
You too, dude. Bye.
Merry Christmas.
You guys.